All right, folks, welcome back one more time to the channel. This is Alex Handbasket, where we bring you the wild, wild world of news. Oh my God, yes, the world is going crazy, and I just found something very interesting. We know how the far left can be crazy, but in this video, since the good old Dags have been talking about how the right is equally following suit, I'm going to show you something here, which people probably haven't seen. So here it is. Oh God, this is going to be fun. Israelis stage day of resistance to dictatorship. Wow, sound familiar? First was Australia, then New Zealand, then the UK, then Canada. So the US is like, well, the world's got us covered. Now we get this one over here. Check this out. This is wild. So we got millions of people showing up. Protest. What are they protesting? Apparently, more than 100,000 Israelis have rallied the streets of Tel Aviv, protesting Netanyahu's plan to shatter the state's legal system. Wow, does this sound familiar? This is like all the countries who went to a little thing called a WEF conference in a Davos meeting. Just certainly coming out at the same time and saying, we want to do some dictatorshipping. So this article goes on. Here's the plan. Hands more power to lawmakers in overriding Supreme Court decisions. So basically they want to either stack the court through non-voting because they control the elections. Ooh, sound familiar. My God. He wants to appoint judges since he's already appointed everybody else. But you see, here in Israel, it's almost very similar to Canada, except the exact opposite. They're trying to, in Canada, they're taking the power out of, the people and putting it into the religion of woke. And in Israel, they're trying to take power out of the people and put it into the religion of Israel. You see. So, you know how the state and religion's not supposed to match up. It's supposed to be a separation of church and state. And Canada, we have the Church of the Woke, and in Israel, they have their good old Israeli church. So they're trying to stack judges, threatening judicial independence, and jeopardizing minority rights. Well, you see, as much as you want to talk about minorities and majorities and religion and all this is plain and simple dictatorship. You want to bring in the power to surveil you. And to be honest, this isn't even about dictatorship, because they will have dictatorship if they have surveillance. So they want the entire world to go at the same time, and they're just lining it up. And you knew these guys would be right on the cusp. So I recently heard about this, and it is wild. He gives this little thing that says, "Oh, I'm not doing anything. This is going to be great." So apparently, so we haven't seen this in the news. This has been going on for quite some time, between 4 and 8 months, I guess. And they decided to have a one-day protest where hundreds of thousands of people showed up. Protest. You get some people in here. There's great danger to our democracy. It's going to become a dictatorship. But it's not going to be a dictatorship of, the prime minister or the president of the country. It's going to be a dictatorship of the corporate interests of the world, you see. That's why they're going after Russia and soon to be going after China. So they're trying to abolish this, well, not abolish the Supreme Court, but they're trying to control it. And what they want to do is bring a law in. Let me see if I can find an article on this law, but apparently they're trying to bring a law in that says the parliament, it's got a special name in Israel, but it is a parliament. We want to vote on every law that the Supreme Court decides on. So if they don't decide our way, we can override it by voting. And that it's just going straight down dictatorship lane right there. So the people are awfully mad over there. And they're doing exactly what the truckers did. So they're not showing up with trucks, they show up with hundreds of thousands of people. So look at this. This is wild. So guess who was forced to leave the city? Or guess who tried to leave the city? But they blocked the airport. They blocked from leaving on roads. And he tried to leave the country, apparently, or he had plans to leave the country, and they blocked the airport. I mean, this is wild, and nobody is saying a damn word about it. I mean, this is just crazy. Crime minister. It sounds familiar. Oh my God, this is just wild. Well, here it is. The parliament is called the Knesset. It is so bloody similar to what we had here last year this time. And it's actually funny how these things happen in February and March. I mean, good God, what's going on? It's like March stands for marching or something. This is just wild. It's everywhere. And what the elites like to do is they like to rotate countries. So they'll bring something in this country, or they'll try to push it in this country, and if it doesn't work, they'll move on to the next country. And it's very sad that Australia just, went straight down into the ditch, and they were shooting rubber bullets at people. I mean, they didn't do that in Canada. It wasn't quite that bad. They did bash people with guns and step on them with horses. But this is just the rotation of madness, the rotation of surveillance and dictatorial madness. The people don't have a choice. Our democracy is on the line. Well, you probably don't have one anyway, just like Canada doesn't have a democracy, Australia doesn't have a democracy, the U.S. doesn't have a democracy. I mean, these corporate overlords are just going for it. They're, as much money as they spend on lobbying and all this stuff, you suppose they would just work for the people and pay the people, because that money would be less to spend on the people working for you and than it would be to buy the politicians. And the politicians are getting real expensive now, and they're a little upset about that, corporate overlords, for paying too much. But what they should have done is kept the power of the money in the people, and then this kind of thing wouldn't have happened. It is wild. Let's see if we got anything more here. This is a very short video. Economics, unity on the line. I mean, so, see? There you go. There you go. And, it's quite funny that this is happening everywhere, and all they do is rotate and rotate and rotate between countries to try and see what they can push one little thing at a time. It's very, very, very mad. And like I said, the corporations are not spending their money wisely. Politicians are becoming real expensive. And, that's why the U.S. is always inventing more money, but they want to continue their system. As long as you're in charge, the system is fantastic. I mean, there was some madness also either today or yesterday in the Supreme Court going after Matt Taibbi and him, making the Twitter files, and they just had nothing to talk about the Twitter files, but they just tried to rip him, and they went like, oh, you got paid. Well, why would I not? Why would I do it? Of course I got paid to do a job. So, they have nothing to criticize, and when they have nothing to criticize about the actual files, it becomes a smear fest, and everyone knows it very well. So I'm going to see if I can go back to this article here and see what it says. Right, so straight out of Tel Aviv, Israel. Israeli protesters on Thursday were intensifying their opposition to a contentious government proposal to overhaul the judiciary with a bid to block Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's route to the airport ahead of an official day trip. Oh my God. And he was supposed to go overseas and visit the U.S. Defense Secretary. Demonstrators have been out protesting for more than 2 months. Oh, 2 months. It was 8 weeks. Okay. Against the overhaul, launched a day of resistance to dictatorship on Thursday. Protesters waving Israeli flags descended on the country's main international airport, blocking the artery leading to departures area with their cars. The disruption snarled traffic, and it was not clear how Netanyahu would breach the airport. Elsewhere, protesters blocked main intersections in the seaside metropolis of Tel Aviv and other cities. A small flotilla of paddleboards and kayaks tried to close off the main maritime shipping lane off the northern city of Haifa. This is amazing. This is amazing. Some protesters barricaded the Jerusalem office of a conservative think tank, helping to spearhead the judicial changes. I wonder if they're going to get into these changes in this article. The uproar over Netanyahu's legal overhaul has plunged Israel into one of its worst domestic crises. Beyond the protests, which have drawn tens of thousands of Israelis to the streets and recently became violent, oh, well, they learned that Canada's didn't work, I guess. Opposition has surged from across society, with business leaders and legal officials speaking out against what they say will be the ruinous effects of the plan. The rift has not spared Israel's military, which is seeing unprecedented opposition from within its own ranks. So even the military is like, yeah, we can't have this crap. Netanyahu took office in late December after a protracted political stalemate, and his allies say the measures aim to rein in a court that has overstepped its authority. Sure they have. Critics say the overhaul will upset the delicate system of checks and balances and slide Israel towards authoritarianism. Oh my God, it's everywhere. It's just everywhere. They're going for it, baby. Critics also say Netanyahu, who is on trial for corruption, is driven by personal grievances, that he could find an escape route from the charges through the overhaul. So he's under corruption charges, and if he changes the court, all he can do is get him and his buddies to vote him right back in there. Well, people said enough of that crap. Netanyahu, of course, denies wrongdoing and says the legal changes have nothing to do with his trial. Sure they don't. Demonstrations are underway across the country as Netanyahu and his allies have pledged to press ahead with a series of bills that would strip the Supreme Court of its ability to review legislation and give coalition politicians control over judicial appointments. An attempt by Israel's ceremonial president to defuse the crisis through an alternative legal reform has so far been unsuccessful. So he's tried many times to do this under legal reform, but it's not working, so he's going after the Supreme Court and going to render them totally useless. And of course, the system has to maintain itself. Far left, far right, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's all about control. Israel's on the verge of becoming an autocratic country. What, like Canada, USA, Australia, New Zealand, England, UK, Scotland, Ireland. Oh my God, do as they say, we're the corporate overlords. The current government is trying to destroy our democracy and actually destroy the country. Protesters' main objective Thursday was to complicate Netanyahu's journey to the airport ahead of a state visit to Rome. Oh, he's going to consult with the Vatican about this takeover. There's another one, Italy. I forgot Italy, and Germany, and France, and oh my God, the entire West. They held up some signs, yada yada. Come on, get into the why. Why he wants to do this. We all know why. An Air Force Black Hawk helicopter idling at a Jerusalem helipad that was reportedly set to take Netanyahu to the airport appeared to be diversion and took off with no passengers. Regular passenger flights were not, we don't care. Protests show how solid, don't care. So they do mention here the Supreme Court judiciary there is independent, um, which I'm not sure how it works there, but they are independent, and that's why Netanyahu's charged with corruptions because they actually went after their leader, not like they would ever do that in the other countries I mentioned just earlier. The police overseen by an ultra-nationalist national security minister who was appointed by Netanyahu, I guarantee it. I don't want to pronounce his name, have pledged to prevent the disturbances and said that they already made arrests as the protests were underway. Police on horseback were stationed in central Tel Aviv where protesters were marching and a water cannon truck was parked nearby. Red billboards festooning the city's main highway read, "Resistance to dictatorship is mandatory." All right, let's get into why. Visit Thursday by Lloyd Austin, U.S. Defense Secretary, was also affected by the protests. An Israeli official said that Austin's meetings had been moved to a factory near the airport due to the disruptions. Oh, so now these leaders are, wow, and not a word. I haven't heard a word on TV about this, especially not in this good old country of Sensorinadia. That's why we're getting this whole thing in Canada is to block the news of this from coming over, you see. We don't want no news about no big ass protests with hundreds of thousands of people coming to Canada. Thursday morning, military reservist protesters barricaded the Jerusalem offices of the Coalet Policy Forum, a conservative think tank that has helped craft the overhaul. So the military is going after this think tank overhaul, saying you cannot take over the Supreme Court, screw you. Oh my God. Several dozen people, including two former Navy chiefs, were gathered in the waters off Haifa on kayaks, sailboats, and stand-up paddleboards in a bid to block the city's shipping lane. And they don't mention why. Why? Well, if you listen to a nice little interview today on Breaking Points, they said why. It's because they have these little occupations that they do in Palestine, and they're trying to convert Palestine to Israeli rule. And the Supreme Court is like, you have created 9 illegal settlements. Now, we're only going to say they're legal if you keep us as a separate judiciary board. Okay? And now the cat is out of the bag, you see. So they're allowing them to do these illegal seizures of Palestine territory in order to build housing for the Israelis and create a nice little subdivisions in Palestine territory. And we know what's all happening, and the military shoots Palestine all the time, and they throw little rocks like Mr. Pebbles there. And we know who the aggressor is if they're creating 9 new subdivision takeovers. The Supreme Court there decided that they were going to keep quiet about this, and so Netanyahu said, let's either abolish the Supreme Court or we'll just make laws that any decision they make that we don't like, we can overrule it in our little Knesset parliament. Wow. So the world is upside down, whether it's left, right, center, it doesn't really matter. This isn't about right or left. This is about up and down, corporate rule, and how much money they have to spend. So the government creates the money, the corporations take the money. If they don't give back, like boot backs like the Ukraine was doing there for the last 8 years, then they go in there and they destroy the place. Either left or right, doesn't really matter, you see. Doesn't really matter. If you don't give us our kickbacks, then we come after you. So corporations are tired and the kickbacks are getting too much. And when they get too much, we must take over everything. Hell in a handbasket, people. Hell in a handbasket.